Hi, everybody. I'm Candid Stanisci of CFL Talk. Welcome to thank you for being here and watching here on the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download the app, make sure you rate, leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. To subscribe to Candid Stanisci, 10:30 on YouTube, that would help as well. Now on CFL Talk, joining me as usual is David Morassutti. David, how you doing, buddy?
Good. How are you doing?
Watched myself a little bit of football. Of course, it's what we love to do, and I had a great chance to watch the games this week, and it was they were all impressive in their own way. I guess it's starting to get to the point where teams now have to decide. It's funny, it's a crazy time of the year where you have to decide who you're resting, who you're not resting, who you're playing because you're out of the playoffs. All these different scenarios that treat the games with a blender, right? The games are now all going to be like thrown into a blender, and you don't know what's going to be thrown in the blender. So it's a kind of volatile time of year in the Canadian Football League.
No, yeah, and it's one where certain teams have to find a way to keep their fan bases in tune to actually care about the remaining games because some of them have nothing to play for,
That's right.
and also for coaches, it's such a crucial point in the season because it's some for some teams, a la Montreal, they don't have anything to play for, but the last thing you want is for your team to get too you
Complacent.
know, yeah, right. Let things kind of go down, and then trying to ramp things back up again is not easy, right? And and for a few other teams, boy, there's still a lot to be decided, and it's rare you get a situation like this at this point of the year.
Also with Montreal, it's a team that last year talked about the way they were trending, right? The role they were on. We watched them during the interviews, all the players, the players that we interviewed, the coach. Nobody thought we'd be here, and now we're on a roll. We've won 5 games in a row. We're a better team than people give us credit for. So now they've got to live up to that standard because that's what came out of their mouth last year is to have this momentum that you got to have. And they weren't the first team that benefited from late season momentum. That is something that happens regularly. So that's the debate that happens in last year's experience with the Toronto Argonauts and how great a year they had. Momentum, it really was lost on their part because they did so well.
Yeah, of course, and the team, the last thing they want is for a player to get injured in a game that didn't mean anything because the team is trying to walk that fine line,
Mm.
and it's not easy, right?
No, it's not easy at all, and all the decisions are second guessed. And not just on the outside of the envelope or the bubble that the team finds itself in, whether it's the locker room, whether it's the coaching staff or the quarterback room or the organization itself or the fan base. Everybody looks at that situation, and is really making decisions in regards to, oh boy, is this team going to be okay? Should Montreal, using Montreal as an example, can they afford to rest guys that they need to be playing at their best and continue to be playing at their best? Stopping and starting in football only works in practice.
No, right? And in practice, you talk to any player, yep, practice can help in a lot of ways, but it's not it doesn't replace games. It doesn't. And so that will continue to be something that I think teams will have to kind of judge on their own, right? Can they be in a position where we can push ourselves in practice, but then hope that the team that it translates to the game. It doesn't always happen that way, and so this is where you you look at so many different teams across the league, and especially teams that have gone far, right, in the playoffs, and look at how they did it. Right, we've heard it so many times. teams that have gone on the big run at the end are the ones that always come away, in a good spot at the end of the year. That's true, but it's also teams that build the right habits. I think has more to do with it than just you win games. 'Cause you can win games ugly. You can win games you're not supposed to. You're not supposed to, but if you're doing it the right way, then it bodes well going into the playoffs. Let's just
Absolutely, and take a look at what Montreal's in a position doing. Part reason because of health, they're playing with their backup quarterback. Now, if you're only taking out your starting quarterback, I suppose it isn't as impactful on the rhythm that teams want to have heading towards the playoffs and then going into the playoffs. But still, there is a difference there, but it isn't as bad. It's funny because if we talk about it, we're making a big deal out of nothing. If we don't talk about it, we're not taking everything into consideration. It really is an interesting, as I said, time of year because of the blender effect that the end of season has and the way it affects different teams in different ways. And uh, a wrist on a helmet, a finger banging a helmet for a quarterback in a game. We talk about it. We're talking about it now in the context of going into the playoffs and staying healthy. I mean, that can happen when the question of whether a team's leading by 2 or 3 touchdowns with minutes left. Do we take the quarterback out?
Mhm.
It is such a decisive decision in hindsight. In foresight, not so much. But in hindsight, we look back and go, "Well, he should have played that game, or he shouldn't have played that game because he got hurt." So this is a very, like I said, not only is it physically the players who play on the team in a blender, it's also the emotions are in a blender. There's a lot of stuff at stake, and a lot of ways to try and hedge your bets. And it's a laundry list of ways to hedge your bets.
Well, that's it, right? There are ways, and look, that's what the coaches get paid for, right? Finding the ways to navigate the very tough decisions that have to be made, right, throughout a game. And you look at, especially, you know, coaches that maybe push their teams maybe a little too far at certain points, or you know, you look at Montreal, right? This past weekend they played Ottawa, a game that didn't mean much for them. Okay, let's put Davis Alexander in the game. Let's not put Cody Fajardo in the game. What happens? They win the game, right? They win the game, and was it a convincing win? No, but I also look at it as Davis Alexander got some pretty valuable reps,
Uh-huh.
right? That's something also teams I think need to realize as well. It's not bad to have your backup ready to go just in case, because we know in football, snap your finger, quarterback can get hurt, and plan B needs to be ready to go. And so, I don't hate how some teams have gone about certain things, but there are teams who have bigger fish to fry, and we're figuring out if their backup quarterback's going to play at the end of the year, because some teams don't have that luxury.
What also, is I'll call it concerning. We talk about momentum going into the playoffs. The running game against Ottawa was very ineffectual. I wouldn't call it effective when you consider the quarterback Davis Alexander ran for more yards than the running team did. So and that speaks to if that's the way the team's playing, you sure don't want your number one quarterback in there, especially Fajardo, who I don't know, is he 100% healthy? Do we know that he's 100% healthy? Is he 100% healthy and sitting out, or does he have some issues, some stuff that they want to help heal before they go into the playoffs? Which is all part of that decision making process in
Mhm.
regards to whether a quarterback or a player plays, right? The state of his health. You want them, momentum's important, but being in good health in a playoff game, I think, is as or if not more important.
Oh, absolutely. And look, it wouldn't surprise me if Cody Fajardo's dealing with. Everyone's dealing with something at this point of the year. If you have a team, if you have a quarterback who's 100% healthy, you must have the best offensive line in the league, and he never got touched, right? And so I look at Montreal specifically.
Well,
Uh,
let's talk
yeah,
about them in the context of the game against Ottawa, which they won 19-12. You introduced that. It was the last game played, but since you went there, continue and frame it also in the game and how we've done a little bit of that.
yeah. Well, look, I look at I look at Montreal, and they didn't have exactly the best. They haven't had the best run lately of play.
Hmm.
They were off to such a dominant start. You kind of expected things to cool off a little bit here, but you know, I haven't been too impressed with them the last little while. Right against Toronto, they stayed in the game because Toronto didn't take the game away from them.
It's true. Toronto had far many more chances to.
But yeah, over their last 3 games, they are 3-2-1 because they had the one tie against Calgary. And the two teams they beat Ottawa twice. Ottawa has not looked very good, and the Lions they lost. They beat the Elks, who I don't know if you're not.
Up and
Almost a
down.
lot of teams are beating the Elks right now.
Yeah,
So
we could
I think
talk.
for Montreal, I would say they didn't need the win, but they kind of needed the win. And what I saw in this game was, you know, some issues that I still think are going to percolate, which is can they protect their quarterback? That was an issue in the game. They did a better job running the ball, right? Yeah, as you mentioned, Davis Alexander did most of the work. I'm a little concerned about the running backs. Like, is Walter Fletcher going to be able to produce? Good to see Austin Mack is back
Yeah, he
into his
makes a
groove.
difference. I mean, he
Yeah,
jumped right back into where he left off before.
and
Almost
I
found
think
his
that's an
depth.
important development for them. They need with Phil Putt out. Cole Speaker's a good receiver. I just don't know if he's a capable number one. And Julian Grant's good, but I don't know if he's a capable one. Austin Mack, we know he's a capable number one. So
Absolutely.
it was good to see him back. I do know, yes, the weather was a factor. Wet weather makes it very tough for quarterbacks, and who it was a tough one, especially for Jeremiah Mazzoli, because I
Well,
don't know if you're Ottawa and you watch this game, who are you starting in the playoffs?
they're trying real hard to make Mazzoli their number one. The same thing BC's doing, right? The exact same thing. They're hoping that player reverts to previous success. No one can question the pedigree of Jeremiah Mazzoli, but we can question his state of health over the past few years, and that has interfered with at least our being able to have confirmed that he is that quarterback that helped lead the Ticats to multiple Grey Cups.
Mhm. Yeah, I like. You know what? It's funny. We talk about who's going to start the play. Who's going to start on Saturday? They played on Monday. This is considered a short week because they're
Mhm.
likely not having a practice today. I didn't see anything today, and I would assume that the rest. You only got a few days, and they got to travel to Toronto on Friday. This is a short week for them, and who they start at quarterback this week will say a lot. Will go a long way in determining who's going to get that start in the playoffs. I think because this is as close to a playoff game. This is a
It
playoff
is.
preview.
It is. This is not only a playoff preview, David. It's a playoff positioning game. Because
Yeah.
if Toronto wins this game and Ottawa with the disadvantages that you've highlighted, if Toronto wins this game, Toronto will have a home playoff game. You and I won't have to go to Ottawa. Won't have to make that decision.
That's true, right? And so I look at this game and I say, man, Ottawa's really gonna have to. This is Bob Dice's most critical part of the year.
And
He
the
can't.
organization, they want a home game, man.
Yeah, they do want that home game. They've been such a good team at home. I think there was a point where they were undefeated at home throughout the year. Like they have a 6-1-1 record at home. 6-1-1. They're 2-6 on the road. And I said it, and I've been saying it ever since the start of the year. Everyone was very excited about Ottawa, and look, they've done a lot of good things. They beat Toronto pretty handily the last time they played each other. But this is not an Ottawa team that I think like what we saw at the early part of the year was a bit of a gift of a good schedule, and they've proven that they've really struggled with these tougher opponents. I think the big part of their issue is offense because I think their defense is pretty good, but their offense is not giving them a lot of help. I mean, look, they're the only team in the league in the East that doesn't have 400 points. They have the same number of points scored as Edmonton and Calgary.
Two teams that didn't make the playoffs.
Two teams that haven't made the playoffs. Their saving grace is that their defense has kept them in a lot of games, and kept them in a lot of close games. But it's starting to catch up to them now. And you get concerned. You get concerned about if you're Ottawa, the concerning part is your defense is good enough to win, but your offense isn't. And unfortunately, there's only so much your defense can do. And this will be a big test for them. But in this game specifically, you only allow 19 points. Your offense should be able to do enough to get you the win. Unfortunately, that's not what happened.
Yeah, the depth of the offense and the bigger picture, not just the quarterback, not just the receivers, not just the running game, the bigger picture, the depth of the offense to deal with situations that defenses think can help corrupt the offense of the opposition, that being Ottawa. The flexibility of the offense to be able to deal with new defenses and once there's a book on them, can they spin, can they pivot, can they do things to make the offense continue to be successful?
Yeah.
I'm on the side of it could be injuries, but for the most part, offenses have to be flexible. They have to change and deal with defenses finding weaknesses, and offenses have to negate those weaknesses. And right now, Ottawa hasn't shown the flexibility offensively to have great offensive games back to back. They have had difficulty doing that. I'm in agreement with you that to win, you can win on a good defense, but there's always some offense that helps get you the points on the board because defenses, even if they shut the other team out, you still have to score, right? You have to score. So I think Ottawa's in a situation where, they're trying as hard as they can to make Jeremiah Mazzoli their number one quarterback. Dustin Crum had a moment, and then of course, we have their quarterback that's injured now. I think that's part of the lack of success that they're having.
Yeah, well, I think it's that they just don't know who their quarterback's going to be, and I think until they decide, well, and also just take some pressure off the quarterback too, right? Run the ball a little bit more, get your running game going so that it makes the offensive flow a little bit better. But I mean, we just saw some tough decisions, underthrown footballs. There was the one interception near the end of the game where Mazzoli tries to get a receiver, underthrows him, and it's intercepted. Like, just backbreaking mistakes are going to cost you football games, and so that's what happened to them in this one.
Yeah, Drew Brown is a guy that had some success. It started fading a little bit, but that fade is defense is adjusting to the quarterback. This is the thing about football. It's defenses, if they get a chance to improve what they do, they will smother your offense if your offense isn't flexible and has a counterbalance to what the defense is doing. Ottawa is a team right now that has not been playing well. They've slipped down the standings just as the Argos have climbed up the standings. And now the game that they played against Montreal, I'm not saying it was uninspired, but it didn't have the urgency that a team had a chance to hold second place at the end of the week. You know, they went into the week ahead of the Argos. Argos did their part. They won, and Ottawa could not win, and therefore take back second place. So really, that's what that game was for when it came to Ottawa. They needed the victory against Montreal, and they came up short. It's going to be an interesting game coming up. Um, I guess another comment with Montreal and Ottawa, that game. Anything to close out that game, in your opinion, that we haven't touched on?
No, I think we
Austin
covered it.
Mack was, to me, the most important change, most influential player in that game. He
Yeah,
made the difference for that team, for Montreal,
for sure.
because the quarterbacking statistically was not that impressive.
No,
One
no.
interception.
Yeah.
That was the statistic of note. Of course, now Ottawa is, the team that we're talking about now, mainly because I think from what you said, I guess I had more faith in Ottawa than you did at the beginning of the year. I was one of those people that thought this could be. I
And
was.
why?
I bought into it completely. I really felt that if they had a healthy Mazzoli, and if Drew Brown, especially after the first couple of games, I go, oh, this Drew Brown, he's for real. This guy's really good. So for me, it was Austin Mack. Austin Mack was the difference in that game. And you know what? That's the kind of player he is. And Montreal adding him just improved their chances that much, because he's on the team.
No, for sure.
And let's go to BC and Saskatchewan. I watched this game and I kept waiting and waiting and waiting some more for BC's offense to do something. We can say what we did about Ottawa, David, but BC was even worse. I mean, they were totally ineffectual. A lot of bad luck too, I must admit.
Frank, I'm worried that BC might not make the Grey Cup this year.
You're worried?
I don't think I'm the only one that's worried. I think
There's nothing that says that they can beat either Winnipeg or Saskatchewan. I think Saskatchewan stuck a fork in that turkey. I mean, I know Saskatchewan was playing at home, but we also know that they were both playing for second place, and now Saskatchewan has a home game. And it's going to be BC, and BC is going to have to play really well on the road, something they haven't done very well.
no, and that's again, BC had second place. They had the advantage. They had the best position to fend off Saskatchewan to get second place, and we knew, we were kind of talking about it when you bring back a quarterback, and we were saying, but is it really going to be Nathan Rourke's team? Turns out it probably wasn't going to be Nathan Rourke's team. What really I think did it in for the Lions, in my opinion, I look back to the loss against Toronto, because they picked up a huge victory over Montreal, right? We were waiting for Rourke to come back to life a bit. They were able to pick up a win, even though he threw 3 interceptions in that game. Then they go and they play Toronto, and Toronto beats them handedly. Nathan Rourke gets benched in the second half. And in my opinion, since then, that team hasn't been the same. Yes, they got a win over the Stampeders. Again, who's not beating the Stampeders other than Toronto, maybe? But I look at the loss to Hamilton that they had, where they gave up the lead. They looked like they were going to be in a good position to win. They gave up 18 points in the fourth quarter, lose that game.
Mm-hmm.
Then you look at this game. We have a team in Saskatchewan who has been on a roll when they couldn't win. This team couldn't win for 7 straight games. Then they go on a bit of a roll. Trevor Harris is healthy. He's back, getting himself back to shape. In this one, AJ Left finally comes back after, he's been on the shelf for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And the concerns I had about BC with Nathan Rourke proved to be true. They want Nathan Rourke to be the savior, the hero, Superman. He's not able to do it. 2 interceptions in the game.
No TDs.
No touchdowns. Wasn't really able to do much with his legs. In Saskatchewan, they dominated the time of possession. Trevor Harris was 25 of 30. Like, we're talking about a quarterback who's always been very accurate, but he wasn't making mistakes.
Mm.
And I think, again, I think BC's defense, I don't know what's happened to them since the start of the year, but that defense has taken a serious, it's taken a downturn. And if you're wondering, like, where, it's not just the offense. I think we've always put a lot of pressure on that offense.
Mm.
The defense hasn't done very well, in my opinion. William Stanback, they didn't really use him that much, only 8 carries. I mean, it doesn't help that they were trailing for the entire game, but they got off to such a bad start. They were playing catch up the whole game, and they played right into Saskatchewan's hands.
Justin McInnes was the highlight for me with BC. 119 yards receiving. But he's not the guy that's supposed to make this team go offensively, at least in the receiving. So there's a lot of players who aren't accomplishing what they need to accomplish for this team to be successful. I'm just wondering if it would be fair to say that maybe finally the pressure on this team to be hosting the Grey Cup might be part of the problem. Coming out of the gate, they have not been the same team they've been the past couple of years. I know they had a bit of a drop off last year. Maybe that's what happened. Maybe this is the way they've been trending the past year or two. When they had their quarterback Nathan Rourke here a couple of years ago, they looked like a team that was trending to be perennial Grey Cup representatives. They were a team that could handle the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. They're not that team anymore, and it's I'm shocked at the way the season has gone for BC. I would never have seen this happen for them. And the moment that Rourke came back, I guess I made the mistake that probably many people made, is that we assume that the guy's going to be as good as he was when he left, and not consider there might be factors that might change his ability and his success, which it appears has happened actually.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like, look, I look back at that game, the interception, the pick six, I think that went off William Stanback's foot might have been the biggest fluke of
a 3 people.
It bounced off his foot.
Yes, it did.
Off the foot,
off a defender's hands,
and then to the other defender's
hands until somebody caught it. It looked more like volleyball than it did foot.
Yeah. But here's the thing: you had 6 turnovers in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Teams are not you're finding out CFL teams, you give up that many turnovers, it's too much.
And you have to guard yourself against Saskatchewan. They're the best.
Yeah, they smell blood and they'll go after. We know in his time in Toronto, Corey Mace loved and preached turnovers.
Absolutely, give
right?
away.
Force the mistakes. I mean, 6 field goals for Lahr, because even if they weren't scoring touchdowns, they were finding ways to put points. And you had Rourke replaced in the fourth quarter. I just wonder, is it too much pressure? Is it a lack of focus? I don't know if it's effort. I don't like ever criticizing a team's effort. But this is a BC team that I think had so much it put on them. They go and they get Rourke, they get Betts back, and it's like, all right, let's go to the Grey Cup. Oh wait, we have to win games before we get to the Grey Cup.
There you go.
Right, and it's a struggle right now, and look, I'm worried about the Lions. Unfortunately, I know you don't like hearing that, but I am worried about the Lions just because they're picking the wrong time of the year to have a bad game. Now, before we started to go live, there was some news from practice on who's going to be starting this weekend, and it's not going to be Nathan Rourke. The return of big play VA Vernon Adams. He's got the first team reps. Farhan said that he's going to be getting the start. Question now becomes, he starts, he wins. There's no doubt he's going to be the quarterback going forward.
There's no doubt.
You just put in a boatload of money to bait Nathan Rourke past this year. That's going to be a tough one if when it's all said and done. But man, BC, they got to figure it out because it's bad enough to lose. It's bad enough, but it's worse to lose to the team that you're chasing.
Mhm.
And now you've given them all the cards. You've handed them. You've lost your hand. That they could have easily have been still in a position to push for first. I know that likely it's Winnipeg getting first, but man, BC very disappointing.
I'm looking at the standings here, and we haven't got over the not shock, but the understanding that Saskatchewan is now getting a home game in the playoffs. But there's still a question on whether they're going to play one playoff game before the Grey Cup or two. They're only a point behind Winnipeg. I'm seeing it here in black and white.
Yep.
They both have a game left. So that tells me mathematically, if Winnipeg loses and Saskatchewan wins, Saskatchewan could finish first. And I know we shouldn't be shocked if you go back to the beginning of the year, but considering how well Winnipeg has played this year, a loss to Toronto has made a big difference in Winnipeg's future and raised a lot of hope for Saskatchewan.
So two things I'll say on that. One, it's kind of convenient that both Saskatchewan and Winnipeg will be playing their last game next week. Not this week. They're both off this week. And their last game, you've got you've got Saskatchewan going up against Calgary, Winnipeg going up against Montreal.
Mm-hmm.
Saskatchewan's at home. Winnipeg's going to play a Montreal team that, again, doesn't have anything to play for. And I'm sure Winnipeg would love if this game didn't mean anything either. But guess what? Winnipeg plays first. Then it's Saskatchewan.
Mm.
So
And the thing about Winnipeg and Montreal, there's that Grey Cup rivalry. That will enhance. There'll be a lot of pressure from the fans, right, to want to from
absolutely.
Winnipeg to want something good to happen for Winnipeg, and Montreal does not want to give up the, I guess, the Grey Cup winner. That they don't want to take any shine off that. So this game, no matter how important it is, it's going to be important just because of the two players, the two teams that are playing this game. And as you said, Calgary has a chance to ruin Saskatchewan's opportunity, if there is one, for them to make the move to first place. So it'll be very interesting when you flip back to the end of that. I have to tell you that Montreal Winnipeg game is going to be very, very interesting, and I'll be curious to see how important it will be for Winnipeg to finish first. We'll know how important it is by who plays in that game.
Yeah, it'll be very curious, but I mean, fortunately, they'll give the season finale a little more. It'll actually mean something. We're not just watching games to watch teams go through the flow of it. I'll say that.
Yeah, it's too bad, but there's no pressure on Montreal to win to finish first. They're a very proudful team, and we talked earlier about momentum, and we know that their coaching staff, their head coach, loves momentum, thinks of it very highly, and so Saskatchewan thumps BC. Saskatchewan looked really good offensively. Saskatchewan looked really good defensively. Saskatchewan looks. Between you and I, David, like the team that we thought they would be just by virtue of who they hired as their head coach. This looks like a Corey Mace team.
It does. It definitely does. And again, having AJ Ouellette's huge. I know that the run game hasn't always been the fixture in Saskatchewan, but to have AJ in there, the physical back, is going to be crucial for them. And again, if Trevor Harris doesn't put himself in a disadvantage, this team has a really good chance to go far.
And with Trevor Harris healthy, he might finally be able to do what he's been trying to do for years. He's tried with different teams. He's been to Edmonton, he's been to Montreal, he's been to Ottawa. He was in Toronto for a little while. And he's always come up short when it comes to the Grey Cup and the playoffs. And I think he's got a pretty good team that'll be able to give Winnipeg a run for their money. Even if they don't finish first, I think this team could play well enough on the road to give Winnipeg a few fits. I really think that, and it'll be interesting. Let's talk a little bit about the Toronto Winnipeg game. We only have a couple of minutes, but uh, I'll summarize my view of the game is that Winnipeg had lots of chances to win this game and just couldn't make it happen. They hit the post, you know, turnover on downs. This did not look like the Winnipeg Blue Bombers to me that we've seen recently. This looks more like the Winnipeg team that played the Argos last time.
This was a copy. This was literally a copycat of the last game. Neither team really inspired much with their effort, in my opinion, in this game. Put up but just either turnovers, missed field goals, missed opportunities on the goal line, penalties. It's just an ugly, ugly game. But one thing I'll say about Toronto, their defense, once again, yeah, against Montreal, they could have. I think that a lot to be desired, but there's no doubt they come to play against Winnipeg defensively. They love that challenge.
I don't disagree with that, but let's also keep in mind that there were 6 sacks of Caleros, and there were this many of Kelly.
Yep. Kelly was getting the ball off quickly. They were running the ball. They not having Kadeem Carey for the second half. That was tough. That was tough for them because, again, he's a very, he's an important runner for them. And
He
so
keeps the other team honest defensively.
Right. And so, I'm looking at the injury report from this game. He was limited in practice, so he was there, but not full participant. So that's gonna be something to watch for. Is he a guy now that maybe gets a bit of a rest down the stretch?
And this is where here we go to that thing we started at full circle. Do you want him healthy in the playoffs?
And I think they do. He's important to that team, but I think, and look, you're hearing, you heard after we talked to Ryan Dinwiddie, health has been crucial for this team.
Absolutely.
Getting guys back healthy and back now. It's not just getting them healthy, back into game action after missing a lot of time with injury. I think that's been a huge part of it.
I think you can inject the same kind of sense that you had earlier about giving players or accepting the fact that a player's injured opens an opportunity for players.
Mhm.
And right now, the running game that the Argos have, which has been so effective, can still continue to be effective. I think with the 2 guys they have that they can run from the backfield.
Yeah, no, they have depth there. It's just Kadeem is the best running back that the Argos have. There's no question about it. But again, this is where you get a little bit of depth, so you don't have to put it all. You can still play them, but maybe you're managing the minutes a bit more.
Absolutely, love the game that added a Boye can play. I'm looking forward him to end up. This might be an opportunity for him to capture the way he played before he got injured last year. At the end of the year, he was really looking really good, and this might give him a chance to recapture that type of play that he had. He gave us a little bit of the Kadeem Carey, can't drag him down. Very quick and strong runner, and the Argos will be able to use that in the playoffs because they do love to switch out their running backs.
No, they do, right? Because like Kadeem Carey is the north south. He's kind of the all around running back. We know Deontay McMahon is more of the speed back, and Adebaboye is the physical runner. They like that. It's good that you don't have to put it all on one player, right? To do it all, for them. So I'm for the Argos. I'm not too concerned. What's concerning is they're not taking advantage of opportunities in the red zone. I thought they're going to be in good shape after they got the first touchdown of the game. Great play call, great play design. But once they get to that goal line, can I just say, and I've been asking, and I don't want to ask coaches these questions because I get my head bitten off when I do. Why on the goal line do you have to run it 3 straight times? Do it twice. You get it stuffed on the second time, run a play action.
Yeah, and Dinwiddie's had a lot of success with that swing pattern to the outside. You know,
He
they've had a lot
has,
of success
and
with that
he
play.
says, "Look, he was saying Chad Kelly didn't go to the hole that was they were expecting him to. He went a different. He didn't do it exactly as the play was designed. But again, it's also dependent on what the other teams doing. It has been an issue all year, and it's not just the Argos. A lot of teams have done this. You have this massive end zone, massive.
Yep.
You can make it seem like you're going to sneak it. The biggest play I ever, the best, one of the best fakes I had ever seen was that Toronto Montreal East final in 2012, where it looked like the Argos was going to do the quarterback sneak, but then Chad Kelly drops back, passes it 12. I've never seen a wide receiver more open in my life because the Montreal didn't see it coming. It was a ballsy play, but those are the plays that it's not a safe play. It's not predictable. So I'm
Well,
hoping.
you know,
I'm hope.
you pay receivers to catch the ball. You know, like
I know.
if you can't throw it to them and anticipate them catching it, I mean, it's counterintuitive in my mind, to say the least. But
Oh,
yes,
for sure.
so we've got ourselves set up for three games: Calgary and Hamilton, Ottawa and Toronto, Montreal and BC. This might be really the week that everybody's uh, like BC. This game, like Calgary and Hamilton, this is going to be a test pattern. We're going to see how who Hamilton wants to see and how good they are. The same thing with Calgary. Ottawa and Toronto's is the game of the week in my mind because so much is at stake.
Yes.
BC on one side of the equation, not Montreal's side, but on BC side, they've got to do something to look better. And if Montreal doesn't play their starter again, or if they don't play a lot of their starters, that's just going to put more pressure on BC to do something good. And right now, if I was a coach of the British Columbia Lions, I'd be concerned with my job. Like this is something this season. It's going to be hanging over the coach's head and the general managers because of the signing they made with the quarterback. There are a lot of questions, and we know completely, I think assuredly, that the owner in BC only wants one thing, and that's winning. And this is going to be the worst time in the world to have the kind of deflating season that they've had thus far. I guess the major question I have for you, David, is it possible they could turn things around? Because that's what they need to do. They need to do a 180.
No, they definitely do. They need to do a 180, and I don't think you're wrong. I think if BC fails to meet expectation, again, we talk about how much money has been spent by the Lions this year to go for the Grey Cup. This is not a maybe next year. No, this was a we need to get there this year. Like
We ordered we
and
ordered bands.
that's where jobs are on the line, and
Ay, ay,
coaching especially. I think coaching is the big one where Rick Campbell's had a long time here to get himself in a position where you know what you've done some good things, but at the same time it hasn't reached the point where where they've won. Right? They were close.
back to the beginning when he was there, when Campbell was there, they brought in Riley,
Yeah,
and it has
spent a
been
lot of money to bring in Michael Riley too.
right. And the same thing happened where the team around Riley wasn't good enough, and I think it's fair to say, or unfair, you can all decide, but I think it's fair to say, the quarterbacks aren't getting the team around them they need in BC. They're not even getting what they had for so many years in a row, a decent defense. I mean, that's abandoned them as well. That's for me, that's the scary part. This team has, as far as I'm concerned, over the past few years has unraveled.
Well, that's the big part for me is this team has unraveled badly, and there are questionable decisions that have been made, questionable ways that this team has also declined in a lot of ways too. And it is. I think it is going to fall a lot on coaching. It usually always does at the end of the day. So I'm curious to see how
Well,
that plays
here's
out
the
there.
GM's position as well, right? So,
Oh yeah.
he's the GM as well.
The owner says, hey, you told me we need to do this, we need to do that. I signed off on it. I gave you the resources, and this is the result. Not good enough. I
Well,
think there's gonna be fans. Fans are gonna be calling for it too. I think like it's gonna be unacceptable. They wanna see themselves in the Winnipeg situation. They want to see themselves in the Toronto position, right? We talk about how great of an owner they've got, the great ownership group,
absolutely.
but man, like, come on. It's not enough to just have ownership. You got to have a team, right? It's
Yeah.
almost like in a way like Hamilton, right? Like,
Oh, absolutely. Actually, 2 cats of a color.
so yeah, I think for BC, you you got to figure this out. Otherwise, some people are going to be looking for jobs at the end of the year
Well,
if it doesn't work out.
something good has to happen, and I guess what would salvage his job is if they could win the playoff game and offer some hope. But one thing I think for sure is that if they don't even win the playoff game, if they don't win the playoff game, I think there's really going to be some soul searching going on in the BC head offices, and they're up against it because even though Winnipeg lost against Toronto last week, the way Saskatchewan and Winnipeg are playing, it's an uphill. Well, it's an uphill battle for BC to do any kind of advancing on the western side of the Canadian Football League.
Well, that's it, right? You're not just trying to get yourself in a position to make the playoffs. They can make the playoffs. It's taking that game to that next level, right? To being an elite team. And can BC do it? They haven't been able to do it. And I don't like to be unfair to teams, but at the same time, they've tried, tried. It hasn't worked. Maybe you got to go in a different direction. So I'm curious to see how it'll go. I'll also say for Hamilton, because you brought up Hamilton and Calgary, they have two teams right now who are looking to next year.
Mm.
I'm curious to see how Hamilton takes these next couple. No, how they end their season. I see Calgary. Matthew Schultz gets the start. For Matthew Schultz, this might be the most important game he will ever play. Because
Uh,
if he comes out and he plays well, maybe Calgary says, maybe there's an option here. And the same goes for Trey Ford.
it's funny you mentioned Hamilton in the same breath with Calgary in that regard because Matthew Schultz is in the exact same position he was in Hamilton at this very point. He was in this position where he had the end of the year to show that he could be the starter the next year. And there was a lot of talk in Calgary. There's a lot of, I don't know, whispering or whatever. If he hadn't been hurt earlier in the season, he would have probably been handed the ball earlier. His injury got in the way of that. And you and I both like the kid. We both think he's a really good quarterback who maybe he's just looking for I think all he needs is a good opportunity. And an opportunity means an offensive line and receivers that help him to be successful. I don't know how discombobulated Calgary is from the inside, but from the outside, they look like they're having difficulty, and to expect this kid to right the ship might be a little too much to ask. But then again, you get a quarterback that makes a couple of good plays, and maybe the team goes on a roll and gains a little immediate confidence, and that's what Calgary needs. They haven't been able to get confidence. Their quarterback Meyer, they were all in with him. They got rid of their star quarterback for him. And I can't believe how no matter how many games they play, I always go, oh, maybe he can. I don't know how many times I've said that, David, that maybe Meyer can. I'm like, oh, he could be the guy. Maybe this is the week. Maybe this is the week.
Yeah.
And that's been going on for 2 years.
Yeah, will be interesting to see who takes the reins.
It'll be really interesting. David, I really appreciate you doing this, buddy.
Thank you, Frank.
All right. For David Morassutti, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching CFL Talk live here on Mondays at 4 p.m. Today's Tuesday. Yeah, well, yesterday was Thanksgiving Monday, so we didn't do the show then. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For CFL Talk news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer, please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Till next time.